Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to Aussie Fish Keeping. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at some of the best tips for keeping cherry shrimp. So obviously cherry shrimp are considered a beginner fish, and don't get me wrong, they are super easy to care for, although there is a couple of things I wish I knew before I got cherry shrimp, and I want to share them with you guys, especially if you are new to shrimp, just to make sure you have the happiest and healthiest shrimp you possibly can. So the things we're going to go over on this list today, I'm not too sure if they're valid and if they work for Caridina shrimp, although it is mainly just the things that I've witnessed with my Neo-Caridina shrimp and things that I've found work for me. But I guess without any further ado, let's just jump straight into today's video. So the first thing I wish I knew before keeping cherry shrimp is all the different water parameters that you have to know and you have to keep quite stable for them. So cherry shrimp are quite sensitive to large fluctuations in water parameters, and it is super important that you keep nice stable parameters for them to thrive in. So there's a couple of little things you can do to keep your water parameters stable, although we'll go over those in a minute. But first we'll just go over the water parameters that you want to keep your cherry shrimp at. So as for pH, there is quite a wide range of different levels that you can keep them at, although it's generally recommended to keep it between 6.5 to 8, although in saying that, I generally try and keep mine around 7 to 7.6, and this just keeps it at a nice, stable, and easy to maintain pH level. So if you are a beginner, I would try and keep it around that 7 to 7.6 range, just because it's the easiest to keep it at, and I just think they do best in that pH range. Now, the other parameter you want to keep your eye on is the water hardness. So this isn't really vital, although it's definitely beneficial to keep your eye on the water hardness and keep it nice and stable for these guys. But generally speaking, as for your water hardness, you want to keep it at around 100 to 200 parts per million. So keeping the water hardness at this level, obviously you're just going to have much happier and healthier shrimp, and their colors will pop a lot more. And as well as that, they'll be more lively just because the water parameters are suitable for them, so they want to move around more. So the other thing you are going to want to have in the water is a source of calcium. So a lot of people feed their cherry shrimp things like cuttlebone, and what this will do is it will provide calcium for your cherry shrimp, which obviously helps them gain a nice strong exoskeleton. Although what I personally do is just chuck a couple of pieces of dried coral in their tank, and you can get that from like your local beach, or I don't know, just a beach nearby. And by adding that into your tank, obviously it's going to provide a source of calcium, and not only that, but it will also raise your water hardness a little bit as well, which is obviously just really beneficial for your cherry shrimp. But yeah, something I would definitely take into consideration before you keep your cherry shrimp is definitely the water parameters in your aquarium. Okay, so the next thing I wish I knew before I got cherry shrimp is how much you have to vary their diet in order to sustain nice colors in them. So obviously, being a really small fish, they don't actually need to eat a lot, although it is very important to give them a nice high protein, rich and varied diet. So obviously you can give them things like shrimp snow and sinking pellets, although generally you do want to vary their diet with this included as well. So you can feed them these sorts of dry foods as a staple in their diet, although some of the times you can feed them things like blanched vegetables or boiled vegetables. So they will usually eat things like zucchini, beans, and spinach. So as well as this, you can also mix up their diet by throwing botanicals in there. And what will happen is once you throw your botanicals in the water, after a couple of days, a small layer of biofilm will actually start to grow over the surface of your botanicals. And this biofilm is super beneficial for both the adults and baby cherry shrimp, and it's actually a really good thing to put in your aquarium, especially if you want to try and trigger your cherry shrimp to spawn, just because they obviously know that there's plenty of food for their young. But yeah, I would definitely recommend keeping in mind the varied diet you will need to provide these guys before you end up getting them. So as for the next tip on the list, something that I would highly recommend for anybody keeping cherry shrimp is providing a nice amount of hiding spots for them in your aquarium. So obviously you don't have to put like a bunch of rocks and sticks in there. You can just use things like Java moss or some sort of plant. Now, most of the time you will want to keep your cherry shrimp in a planted aquarium anyway, just because they can eat the dead or decaying leaf matter, which obviously helps contribute to their diet as well. But not only that, obviously they can hide in the plants, and most of the time you will find they will spend a lot of their time in the moss or in the plants. So as well as that, obviously if they do give birth to some fry, the baby shrimp can definitely hide in there and feed off all the little microorganisms growing in the plants. So I would definitely recommend adding something like a nice big clump of Java moss in there, or even some sort of bushy stem plants. In my tanks, I keep a lot of foxtail, which is just the perfect plant for them, just because you don't really have to care for that plant at all, and you can just chuck it in there. You don't even need to bury it in any sort of substrate. It can act as a floating plant, or it can obviously act as a stem plant as well. But if you are looking for a plant, I would definitely just recommend something like foxtail or Java moss. So yeah, before you consider getting your cherry shrimp, I would definitely recommend you have a nice amount of live plants in your aquarium. So moving on to the next tip on our list is that if you are going to keep them with tank mates, you just want to make sure that their tank mates are obviously compatible with them. So obviously being a very, very small little fish, they can get preyed upon quite easily by much larger fish. And there are actually quite a few fish out there that can eat your cherry shrimp, which a lot of people wouldn't actually think could have the capability of eating your cherry shrimp. So things like small gobies and gudgeons, like peacock gudgeons or bumblebee gobies, definitely can be a great tank mate for adult cherry shrimp. Although if you are trying to breed your cherry shrimp, I wouldn't keep them with something like obviously a goby or some sort of micro predator like that, just because they are going to eat your baby shrimp and you're just not going to have any grow out to the adult stage. And another one I think a lot of people forget about if they are trying to breed their shrimp is things like guppies and even some medium to large size tetras. So again, they're just going to eat your shrimplets, which obviously means you're not going to get any adults growing out. So it is always good to remember, even if you are just trying to breed your shrimp, I would highly recommend just keeping a breeding colony in a species only tank. Although if you do just want a nice little community aquarium, adult cherry shrimp shouldn't be harmed by any of these fish. As long as the cherry shrimp don't fit in the fish's mouth, then you shouldn't find that your fish affect the cherry shrimp at all, and most of the time you won't even find any aggression being displayed between the two whatsoever. But yeah, once again, if you are considering getting cherry shrimp, just make sure you have compatible tank mates in the aquarium. And obviously, if you are unsure, you could either message me on Instagram, and if I can help you out, I can, or you can obviously Google it as well. So as for the final tip on my list, it is the temperature in the tank that you are keeping your cherry shrimp in. So temperature is quite a tricky thing with cherry shrimp, just because they really like a quite awkward temperature that's kind of hard to replicate in your aquarium. So they do like to be at around 20 to 22 degrees Celsius, which obviously is a little bit hard to replicate, just because if you are putting a heater in there, most heaters only go down to like 22 degrees Celsius anyway. Although if you are living in Australia, I would just recommend keeping them in a heaterless tank, and obviously keeping them out of direct sunlight or anywhere that it gets really hot during the day, just because they are quite sensitive to temperature and they really do not like high temperatures in their water whatsoever, which can be hard, although it's definitely not a really big factor that commonly affects cherry shrimp. So if you are worried about it, I wouldn't be too concerned. But yeah, it's definitely just something you should keep an eye on if you are considering getting your cherry shrimp and trying to keep them nice and healthy in your aquarium. But with that being said, that is actually going to bring us to the end of today's video. So I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope I helped some of you guys out. Obviously, if you have any more questions, you can comment down below, or you can DM me on Instagram. Also, if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe and comment your thoughts on the video down below. I always love going through and reading them all. But yeah, with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in that next video.